Ladies and gentlemen, you are about to witness some scenes from the next attraction to play this theater. This picture, truly one of the most unusual ever filmed, contains scenes which under no circumstances should be viewed by anyone with a heart condition or anyone who is easily upset. We urgently recommend that if you are such a person or the parent of a young or impressionable child now in attendance, that you and the child leave the auditorium for the next 90 seconds.
Now, I'm going to sign this, and it's a great honor. $6.2 trillion. I've never signed anything with a T on it. I don't know if I can handle this one, Mitch. We can't chicken out at this point, can we? I don't think so, huh? All right, thank you all. Good, I wanted that to be a nice signature. That was
You released a memo today that says global innovation is the key to limiting the damage. What innovation are you talking about? What's the number one priority? What do we have to innovate first?
Well, in the near term, it's the scaling up of testing and prioritizing who gets testing and getting the quick results. In the midterm, it's these treatments that can cut the death rate down potentially dramatically. And then the final solution, which is a year to 2 years off, is the vaccine. So we've got to go full speed ahead on all three fronts.
Just to head off the conspiracy theorists, maybe we shouldn't call the vaccine the final solution. Maybe just the best solution. Okay.
Yeah, the return to normal solution.
Exactly. Are you aware that there are people out there who have these conspiracy theories that this was all created by you in order to inoculate everyone in the world and put a chip into their blood so you can track them?
Yeah, that's very strange.
Yes.
That the organization that's about saving lives and warning, gets attacked as though we were somehow connected to it.
Well, if you don't save our lives, you can't control our brains.
I'm Fox San Antonio's Jessica Headley.
And I'm Ryan Wolf.
Our greatest responsibility is to serve our
Treasure Valley communities,
the El Paso, Las Cruces communities,
Eastern Iowa communities,
Mid-Michigan communities.
We are extremely proud of the quality, balanced journalism that CBS 4 News produces.
But
we are concerned about troubling and irresponsible, one-sided news stories plaguing our country.
The sharing of biased and false news has become all too common on social media. More alarming, some media outlets publish these same fake stories without checking facts first.
The sharing of biased and false
news has become all too common on social media.
More alarming, some media outlets publish these stories simply aren't true without checking facts first.
Unfortunately, some members of the media use their platforms to push their own personal bias and agenda to control exactly what people think. And this is extremely dangerous to our democracy.
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 Fresh, vital. The old cynicism is gone. We have faith in our leaders. We're optimistic as to what becomes of it all. It really boils down to our ability to accept. We don't need pessimism. There are no limits.
It figures it would be something like this.
The U.S. has cut funding to the WHO. And now you said in a tweet last week that this is just as dangerous as it sounds. How dangerous does it sound to you?
Well, the WHO is a smaller organization than people think. It's about 1,000th the budget of the U.S. healthcare system. But it is where people come together to talk about the drugs and the testing and the statistics. And so I think once the U.S. steps back and looks at this, they won't cut the funding. They'll actually increase the funding because WHO is playing that central role. It's fine to say, like everyone, they could have reacted in different ways, but we need them. We need them to pull together all the scientific knowledge and get guidelines out to the countries of the world. So I'm pretty sure that we won't actually defund them, because telling them to fire their people, right now when we most need them would be a mistake.
There is no America. There is no democracy. There is only IBM and ITT and AT&T and DuPont, Dow, Union Carbide, and Exxon. Those are the nations of the world today. What do you think the Russians talk about in their councils of state? Karl Marx? They get out their linear programming charts, statistical decision theories, Minimax solutions, and compute the price-cost probabilities of their transactions and investments, just like we do. We no longer live in a world of nations and ideologies, Mr. Beale. The world is a college of corporations, inexorably determined by the immutable bylaws of business. The world is a business, Mr. Beale. It has been since man crawled out of the slime. And our children will live, Mr. Beale, to see that perfect world in which there's no war or famine, oppression or brutality. One vast and ecumenical holding company for whom all men will work to serve a common profit, in which all men will hold a share of stock, all necessities provided, all anxieties tranquilized, all boredom amused.
The World Economic Forum, as the international institution for public-private cooperation, is putting its full weight behind this crucial initiative. The purpose of the World Economic Forum is to mobilize business and to make sure that business, together with the other stakeholders of global society, governments, international organizations, civil society, and science, addresses the big issues of our times. We have taken the initiative immediately after the appearance of this pandemic to create a COVID-19 action platform. More than 1,000 companies are engaged and over 30 projects have been put into practice. We feel that business can make a very special contribution, not just pharmaceutical companies and other companies directly related to this pandemic, but every business is challenged today to contribute with its know-how and with its resources to the solution of this challenge, of this problem, which is of utmost significance for the future of humankind. We are particularly committed to this initiative since the Forum has been at the origin, in its annual meeting in Davos, of the Global Fund, Gavi, and CEPI, together with the Gates Foundation and other founders of those crucial organizations, particularly today.
And I appreciate the World Economic Forum providing me the opportunity to be on this stage and say, fuck you, Klaus Schwab, and fuck your New World Order. We, the people, were born free, we will stay free, and you and all of your globalist friends, including everyone in this room, can go fuck yourself.
In fact, when I think about the really bad people, E-Corp, the largest conglomerate in the world. They're so big, they're literally everywhere. A perfect monster of modern society. The E might as well stand for evil. In fact, after a thorough intensive self-reprogramming, that's all my mind hears Caesar reads when they pop up in my world.
We have to offer. Together, we can change the world with
Evil Corp.
They've been talking down new sources of energy. They dismiss wind power. They dismiss solar power. They make jokes about biofuels. They were against raising fuel standards. I guess they like gas guzzlers. They think that's good for our future. We're trying to move towards the future. They want to be stuck in the past. And we've heard this kind of thinking before. Let me tell you something. If some of these folks were around when Columbus set sail, they must have been founding members of the Flat Earth Society. They would not have believed that the world was round.
Now, for a moment, and a moment only, let's give the climate deniers the benefit of the doubt. Let's say that 97% of scientific studies are flawed. Let's say that the thousands of scientists who have issued peer-reviewed reports are actually wrong about the dangers associated with climate change. Ask yourself a question. If we make the moves to do all the things I just talked about, what is the worst that could happen to us for making those choices and dealing with climate change? By 2035, the demand for energy investment will reach nearly $50 trillion, and much of that will be in clean energy. Think of the business opportunities, the jobs that stand to be created, the millions that will be lifted out of poverty in every corner of the globe because of this transformation. A market of some 4 to 5 billion people today growing to 9 billion over the course of the next 30, 40, 50 years. Now, I know there are still a few who insist that climate change is one big hoax, even a political conspiracy. My friends, these people are so out of touch with science that they believe rising sea levels don't matter because in their view, the extra water is just going to spill out over the sides of a flat Earth. They're wrong, obviously. For the benefit of those who may still question the 97% of peer-reviewed studies on climate change, let me just underscore, you don't need to be a scientist to know that the Earth is round, that the sun rises in the east and sets in the west, and that gravity is the reason that objects fall to the ground. You could pick 100 different examples of simple things that happen every day that reflect science and determinations of science. And you don't need to be a scientist, as some assert, to see that our planet is already changing in real, measurable, and alarming ways.
Crazy, right? Two grown men talking to the wall, wall talking back. It's a mess. Hey, don't even worry about it.
And I don't really need to hear what you're trying to provide. I want to know how you're dealing with all these conspiracy theorists on your platform.
So the first way is by demoting low-quality content and promoting more authoritative content, and the second is by providing more transparency for users. So we're introducing boxes that provide factual information at the top of results that have shown themselves to turn up a lot of information that is counterfactual, such as searching for the Earth is flat on YouTube, where you see a lot of...
Your response is to put a box saying, nope, the Earth is not flat.
Correct.
Okay.
You have owners. They own you. They own everything. They own all the important land. They own and control the corporations. They've long since bought and paid for the Senate, the Congress, the state houses, the city halls. They got the judges in their back pockets. And they own all the big media companies, so they control just about all of the news and information you get to hear. They got you by the balls. They spend billions of dollars every year lobbying to get what they want. Well, we know what they want. They want more for themselves and less for everybody else. But I'll tell you what they don't want. They don't want a population of citizens capable of critical thinking.
The Health Organization is moving forward to revise international health regulations in response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Some member states are expressing concern over provisions of the zero-draft WHO Convention Agreement. Critics say the proposed agreement would give the WHO authority over health care, trade, and other aspects of our lives. Well, joining us to explain more is Reggie Littlejohn. Ms. Littlejohn is president of Women's Rights Without Frontiers and co-chair of the Stop Vaccine Passport Task Force. Hi, Reggie. Before we discuss how this ties into U.S. law, what would approval of this zero-draft agreement mean for people worldwide?
Well, I believe that it will mean the establishment of a worldwide totalitarian biotech state. So these instruments, and by the way, you correctly characterized the zero draft as an agreement. That's what they're calling it. They don't want to call it a treaty because they are deliberately trying to subvert the United States and the other countries' treaty processes. So if it's an agreement, all it takes is a signature. It does not take going through our Senate. So people say, oh, don't worry about it. It will never pass our Senate. Well, they are deliberately subverting our Senate process.
Signatories must recognize, quote, the central role of the WHO as a directing and coordinating authority on international health work. What do you believe that means?
Well, it means that the WHO is able to call the shots if there's any health emergency or potential health emergency anywhere in the world, and the language that says that they have to have the permission of the country is stricken so that they can do it without the permission of the country. And it's not only about human health. They have something called One Health, which means that they can do it on behalf of human health, animal health, plant health, the environment. They can use any reason that they want to be able to come in and basically run the show in terms of addressing that health issue.
And I've read the zero draft proposal. It gives the WHO authority over the global supply chain, trade, commerce, through establishment of the WHO Global Pandemic Supply Chain and Logistics Network. WHO Director General Tedros would lead that effort early on in the pandemic. You remember Tedros praised President Xi Jinping for China's efforts to control the outbreak. So your thoughts on him and his potential control of the supply chain?
Well, Dr. Tedros Ghebreyesus is very closely aligned with the Chinese Communist Party, and the Chinese Communist Party has absolutely outsized influence at the World Health Organization, which is why they were able to get away with all the lies that they did, which were just amplified by Dr. Tedros. So this is not a good alliance at all. And in terms of the supply chains, they are also wanting to take control over the intellectual property. Like if somebody in the United States or another country develops a great vaccine, they're going to be forced to share that information, which I think is bad for the production of pharmaceuticals. I think that intellectual property rights are very important.
Yes, I noticed that in the draft agreement. And here in the U.S., let's move forward. How is the Biden administration planning to use the National Defense Authorization Act, the NDAA, to pre-approve whatever is approved by the WHO?
This is something that just came to my attention on Friday from an international law expert, that this National Defense Authorization Act, which was rammed through at the very end of the last Congress, contains within it something called the International Pandemic Preparedness Act. And I think most people in Congress don't even know about this. But that act contains a loophole in it, which he argues, and I agree, makes it that whatever the World Health Organization passes is automatically made law in the United States, again, subverting our Senate. So this needs to be opposed. And in fact, I think that the entire World Health Organization attempt to take over the world, really, through vaccine passports. That's another thing that they want to do. The World Health Organization, if these things are passed, will have the ability to mandate in the United States how we handle a pandemic, including forced quarantines, forced mask mandates, forced vaccine mandates. Why should we allow Dr. Tedros, who failed so miserably in handling the Wuhan virus, order us around about how we handle our own health? So I think that we should actually withdraw from the WHO, and we are calling for there's a bill that is sponsored by Representative Biggs, and there's also a debate right now about raising the debt ceiling. I think that anyone who believes in freedom in the U.S. Congress should condition raising the debt ceiling on U.S. withdrawal from the World Health Organization.
Right, let's sort the buyers from the spires, the needy from the greedy, and those who trust me from the ones who don't. Because if you can't see value here today, you're not up here shopping, you're up here shoplifting.
I'm most proud of the community which we built. It's a community consisting of you, the politicians who are here. We have created strong, trustful relationships practically with every international organization, with every government. But we are thankful particularly to our partners and members who are so much engaged in what we are doing. We are grateful for the engagement of civil society. So many NGOs also here, faith leaders, and we will see this evening also cultural leaders. I want to greet particularly also our young leaders, our young global leaders, our global shapers. Where are you? You see a very strong component of the forum community. Now, why I'm so proud of this community? Because those are people really still believing in the interconnectivity which we have in our world, into the fact that we are all interdependent, which believe in the strength and force of action. People ready to work together to improve the state of the world. People who know that change is not just happening, but change can be shaped by us. In 1970, I wrote a book, and in that book I conceptualized the stakeholder concept. You may know it was Milton Friedman who in 71 published his famous article, or in 1970 his famous articles, The Business of Business is Business. So I wrote a book saying, no, business is not just an economic unit, it is a social organism and has to contribute to society. And so I felt we should create a platform where the stakeholders of our global community could meet.
We lived in little planets, separated and discrete. The Europeans brutally kicked down the walls so that there was no longer, by the end of the European adventure, any culture that didn't know that it was not alone. And with doing this, Europe conquered the world in a way it had never been conquered before, and invented humanity. It also conquered nature. It transformed nature, so on a cold winter night in Paris in 1913, you could banish the dark and banish the cold and extraordinarily hear Mozart. And for all the crimes of Europe, Mozart makes up for many of them. Any continent that creates that. It created a single humanity, but the paradox is, while it conquered the world, it never conquered itself. Europe was unable to unite. The Spaniards attempted it, the French attempted it, the Germans attempted it, the British sort of attempted it. But no one could bring together all of Europe into one entity. Had it done that, it would still rule the world. Norman Angell, who was a very, very brilliant man, who eventually won the Nobel Prize, wrote a book in 1910 called The Great Illusion. And The Great Illusion demonstrated beyond any doubt that a war in Europe was impossible because the level of financial exposure that a war would bring tumbling down, the level of interdependence and trade, made war impossible. He was English, of course, and English believed that no one would do anything that didn't bring a profit. But in 1914, something extraordinary happened. Extraordinary, not because it was so novel, it was novel, but because it was so unexpected. And what was remarkable was that it was unexpected. In 1914, Europe plunged into war. So deeply that in September of 1914, at a single battle of the Somme, 600,000 died in 1 week. And the Europeans didn't blink. The war went on. The war didn't go on for 4 years. It went on for 31 years. Between 1914 and 1945, 100 million Europeans died from political causes. Wars, holocausts, planned starvations, purges, the Spanish Civil War, endless conflict. In 31 years, Europe went to from being the center of the world, the pivot of its culture, the creator of humanity, to occupied territory. In 1945, not only was Europe ruined, not just by World War II, but by this endless range of horror, but it had lost its sovereignty. The eastern part of Europe was occupied by the Soviet Union, the western part by the Americans. Each treated their dominion differently. But make no mistake, it was dominion in the simplest sense. The decisions of war and peace, which are the fundamental questions of sovereignty, used to be made in Paris, London, Berlin, Rome. Now they were made in Washington and Moscow. Heedless. Be done. I might add, and it's an interesting point, that no two countries have ever handled a confrontation as responsibly as the Americans and the Soviets. The opportunities for war were endless. The war never happened.
A new partnership of nations has begun, and we stand today at a unique and extraordinary moment. The crisis in the Persian Gulf, as grave as it is, also offers a rare opportunity to move toward an historic period of cooperation. Out of these troubled times, our fifth objective, a new world order, can emerge, a new era, freer from the threat of terror, stronger in the pursuit of justice, and more secure in the quest for peace. An era in which the nations of the world, East and West, North and South, can prosper and live in harmony. 100 generations have searched for this elusive path to peace, while 1,000 wars raged across the span of human endeavor. And today that new world is struggling to be born. A world quite different from the one we've known. A world where the rule of law supplants the rule of the jungle. A world in which nations recognize the shared responsibility for freedom and justice. A world where the strong respect the rights of the weak.
Starts with a false flag operation.
You can't, in all seriousness, sit there and try and make out anybody.
Okay, let me ask you this, Piers. Wait a minute. Let me ask you something. How much studying have you actually done of 9/11, other than what the government's told you and what mainstream media has told you? I've been studying it 4 years.
I was editor of a national newspaper.
I've talked to people. Wait a minute.
Depth every day for
Really?
5-6 months.
Really?
So I know a lot about it.
Well,
And one
then
thing
how
I do
come-
know is,
let me ask you this
you
then.
cannot say that any member of the Bush administration knew it was going to happen or wanted it to happen. It's a ridiculous thing to say.
Ridiculous. Okay, let's talk about your BBC. I have a tape of a BBC reporter broadcasting directly back to England, talking about a third building has collapsed. World Trade Center Building 7 talks for 7 minutes. All the while she's talking, World Trade Center Building 7 is still standing right behind her. It didn't fall for another half hour. Yet they were doing a pre-broadcast back to England yes, it's true,
you need to
that
take a
this
break here.
building fell and it hadn't fallen
If
yet.
you're trying to make out the British Broadcasting Company, one of the most respected news organisations in the world, was inventing huge buildings falling over, you need to have a break, Jesse. We'll come back after the break.
Well, unfortunately, I think we've lost the line.
We must speak the truth about terror. Let us never tolerate outrageous conspiracy theories concerning the attacks of September the 11th. Malicious lies that attempt to shift the blame away from the terrorists themselves, away from the guilty.
The organizing principle of any society is for war. The basic authority of a modern state over its people resides in its war powers. Today, it's oil. Tomorrow, water. It's what we like to call the God business. Guns, oil, and drugs. But there's a problem.
I don't give a shit.
My way of life. It's over. It's unsustainable and in rapid decline. That's why we implement demand destruction. We continue to make money as the world burns. But for this to work, the people have to remain ignorant of the problem until it's too late. That's why we have triggers in place. 9/11, 7/7, WMDs. A population in a permanent state of fear does not ask questions. Our desire for war becomes its desire. A willing sacrifice. You see? Fear is justification. Fear is control. Fear is money.